Right, welcome to video number 1. This is appropriate. This series is for anyone who knows nothing about the internet, nothing about making websites for the internet. It does not assume that you know anything. So my name is Brian Hafferkamp. I'm a web developer for a United States publisher, and I've been doing web design. I learned web design back in 1996, 97. So the web was very young whenever I first learned, and I've tinkered with it. I have a job in it now where I build modern websites for a publishing company, a book publishing company. And in this series, I wanted to go all the way back to the very beginning. Usually my tutorials start with some knowledge of HTML or CSS, but from here we're starting from the bare bones. So if you have no idea how to make a website, at the end of this you should have a website, and it can be hosted on the internet, and I can even show you how to do that. So I just want to go over a brief overview of how the internet works, how the web works at least. So you have your computer, and I'm using Google Chrome right now, but you can use any sort of browser to browse the internet. So you can use Chrome, you can use Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer or Firefox. There's lots of different ones, Opera, Safari. So whatever you're using to access the internet, to access the World Wide Web, that's what you use. And that's here on this computer. This is you. And whenever you type an email or a URL, it's called a URL. When you type that in here, let's say you go to google.com. So in that process, this is what's happening. You're typing in google.com, you click enter, and it sends that request via something called HTTP, which is a hypertext transfer protocol. It's just like it's a way of saying something, and it says to a computer that's far away from you, usually on a server, what's called a server, which is a really ugly computer, and it's usually in a faraway place. Sometimes it's in your own company, but usually it's in someone else's company, and that server stores HTML files. So that's what we're going to focus on right now, but it stores all of the files that is required to make a website. So there's little folders on there, and if you look on a server interface, it looks just like this. You have folders, and you have folders that you can go into, and it's just holding files inside that folder, and your folder is for your website. So that URL, google.com, is pointed to a folder on a server that Google owns that has all of the website files necessary to make this web page happen. So you make that request, google.com, it goes over to, it's routed to the server, it's pointed to the right server. This is actually a number, if you could look at the number, but they've translated the numbers into letters so that we can more easily remember. Otherwise it's really hard to remember the numbers for each particular server. So it goes to google.com, where that's pointed to, and it looks at the folder at the root. So at the very first top level of that server, it finds that folder, and then it looks first for a document that's called index.html, and that's the very first thing that it looks for. That's the prototypical home page, index.htm or HTML, either one. And then it takes the contents of that index.html and it sends it back to your computer, and the program that has requested that is this web browser. So your computer takes it, your browser processes it, and it sort of reconfigures that HTML and outputs it onto the screen. So that is essentially how it works. A website is a collection of files. So they can be image files, they can be text files, they're often HTML files. But you can also have things like JavaScript files or PHP, or there are any number of other types of files that you can use to output a web page. But the basics are HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, so HTML. And it's a way of marking a document, a digital file, that a web browser can read it and interpret that to the screen, to the monitor. So, and it gives you lots of powerful things that you can do. It's sort of like a text document on steroids in some ways. It allows you to make things bold. It allows you to sort of mark up and get it into the right display mode for your web browser to display to the person who's requesting that page. So that's the basics of how the internet works, and then we're going to focus on HTML. So that's video number 1. Video number 2, we're actually going to dig into the code. I'll show you how to start with a blank screen and be able to create your own HTML file, and be able to write your own basic HTML website page. And we're going to call that index.html, and I'll sort of show you a little bit more about how HTML as a language works in conjunction with regular text, and how it sort of supermans that text to make it more powerful than it really is. So move on to video number 2, and I'll see you there.